Basements, those spaces we often ignore, can conceal far more than forgotten boxes and old furniture. Join us as we dive into the top 20 most disturbing discoveries found in people's basements, from downright bizarre creatures to shocking relics of the past. Number 20. 2 fetuses in jars. When 2 contractors were called in to renovate an old building in Hannibal, Missouri, they never expected to stumble upon a chilling discovery. Tucked away in a basement, hidden beneath a dusty cloth and an old medical examination table, were 2 jars containing fetuses. The building, as it turns out, once served as a clinic in the early 1900s, and rumors suggest it was used for illegal abortions before the 1950s. The current owner, William Neff, recalled his parents mentioning similar jars when they bought the property in 1950, though they rarely discussed it. Neff's father had run a chiropractic clinic there, but before that, a doctor named Hopkins operated a clinic in the building. Some suspect Hopkins may have been involved in illegal procedures. The discovery shocked the contractors and sparked curiosity about the building's dark past. The Hannibal History Museum curator, Lisa Marks, confirmed the building's use as a clinic in the early 1900s. Local authorities were called, and after careful consideration, the police, along with a funeral home, arranged for a proper burial for the remains, ensuring the closure of this unsettling chapter in the building's history. Number 19. An underground city. Imagine discovering an entire underground city while making simple renovations to your home. That's exactly what happened in Turkey in 1963. A man, while knocking down a wall in his basement, stumbled upon a hidden passage. Little did he know that this was the entrance to the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu. This wasn't just any small structure. Derinkuyu is an enormous city buried beneath the earth. Stretching 18 stories deep, it could house up to 20,000 people. To this day, it stands as the largest underground city ever discovered. The origins of Derinkuyu are still debated, but many historians believe it may have been created by people seeking refuge from the Hittites, who ruled the region around 2000 BC. There are tales that they dug this massive underground network to escape threats above ground. However, it's hard to pinpoint exactly who built it, but the city's age and purpose are truly fascinating. What's even more impressive is the city's durability. Despite being over 4,000 years old, none of its floors have collapsed. This is largely due to the type of rock in the region, which also made it easier to dig and expand, allowing for plenty of space to house thousands of residents. While living in an underground city likely came with its own set of challenges, the people who resided there clearly found ways to make it work. Can you imagine the shock the man must have felt when, instead of finding extra room for his renovations, he uncovered a long-lost civilization? One minute you're upgrading your home, the next you're standing in an ancient city that's remained hidden for millennia. Number 18. Over 1,200 bones found hidden in Franklin's basement. In 1998, during the renovation of Benjamin Franklin's former London residence on Craven Street, workers stumbled upon a chilling discovery: over 1,200 bone fragments buried in a hidden basement pit. These remains, which belonged to at least 15 individuals, included both adults and children. Some of the bones even bore clear signs of surgical cuts, showing that they had been used for anatomical studies. The remains date back to Franklin's time in the house, from 1757 to 1775. However, the bones weren't directly connected to Franklin himself, but rather to his close friend and housemate, William Hewson. Hewson, a respected anatomist of the time, used the house as an anatomy school, secretly performing dissections. Since the laws around dissection were murky and bodies were hard to obtain legally, many medical practitioners resorted to grave robbing or using cadavers from executions. The remains were then quietly buried in the basement to avoid legal trouble. Though it might sound like something out of a horror story, this grim discovery had a significant impact on medical science in the 18th century. Hewson's studies contributed to understanding anatomy, despite the ethically questionable methods used to obtain bodies. Benjamin Franklin, always a champion of science, likely knew about the activities in his basement, though he was not directly involved in the dissections. Number 17. Alligator. When a repairman walked into a home in Lansing, Illinois, he expected to fix some faulty appliances, not to come face to face with a 6-foot alligator. Hidden in the basement, the massive reptile had been there for an astonishing 26 years, confined in a large cage. The owner, Charles Price, had been keeping the alligator as a pet, feeding it raw chicken and allowing it to occasionally roam in his backyard. The discovery shocked authorities. Not only was the alligator large, weighing 200 pounds, but it was also kept in conditions far from its natural habitat. Price was quickly charged with unlawful possession of an endangered species. Although he insisted that he had cared for the animal, officials pointed out the dangers involved in keeping a wild predator, like an alligator, in a residential home. Neighbors were stunned, having had no idea about the alligator's existence. It wasn't until the repairman spotted movement in the cage and alerted authorities that the secret was exposed. Conservation officers from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources arrived to remove the alligator and ensure public safety. This bizarre situation left many wondering how such a large and dangerous animal could be hidden in plain sight for over 2 decades. Number 16. A father's bones. Imagine living your entire life with questions about your father's sudden disappearance. Michael Carroll was only 8 months old when his father George vanished without a trace in 1961. For decades, Michael and his siblings were told that their father had simply gone out to buy cigarettes and never came back, leaving their mother to raise them alone. Over the years, rumors swirled. Perhaps George had run off with another woman, or maybe something more sinister had happened. But no one really knew until Michael bought his childhood home. Determined to uncover the truth, he sought help from psychics and even employed ground-penetrating radar. What he found beneath the basement floor was shocking. There, twisted and buried under layers of concrete, were his father's remains, lying just 5 feet below the surface. George's skull bore the unmistakable marks of blunt force trauma, sparking a murder investigation. The police confirmed through DNA testing that the bones in fact belonged to George Carroll, a Korean War veteran. But how did he end up buried in the family basement? Was it a crime of passion or something else? With Michael's mother having passed away in 1998, it seems we may never know. The discovery brought a sense of closure to Michael and his family after almost 60 years of uncertainty. But the question still lingers. What really happened to George Carroll? Number 15. Mysterious woman. In Bowling Green, Kentucky, something strange happened at the home of Bruce Wilkerson, who was the town's mayor at the time. On the night of April 22, 2020, Bruce was staying at a small house he owned, which was undergoing renovations. In the middle of the night, he woke up to strange noises coming from the basement, and along with the noise, he could smell cigarette smoke. The basement, which was more like a cellar, had an entrance outside the house. When Bruce went to check it out, he noticed blood smeared on the basement door, just enough to make him concerned. He opened the door and found a backpack filled with women's clothing and other random items. Bruce, who had previously served as a police officer, immediately contacted the Bowling Green Police Department. He asked if there were any missing person reports, but was told that none had been filed. He decided to lock the door and head back upstairs. Not long after, the power in the house went out. This prompted him to return to the basement, where he discovered the door was now open. Upon searching inside again, he found a disheveled woman who appeared to be in her 20s. She was dirty and clearly frightened. When Bruce tried to call the police, she quickly ran out of the basement before he could stop her. Although nothing was stolen, Bruce still reported the incident. Despite a search of the area, the woman was never found, and her identity remains a mystery. With no missing person cases matching her description, it's unlikely that the situation will be resolved anytime soon. She hasn't been seen again since that night. Number 14. Secret housemate. It started like any typical day for the students living in an off-campus house on 13th Avenue in Ohio. They assumed their home was shared with only 10 housemates, until strange things began happening. The microwave, which no one had used, appeared recently used. Random drawers were left open, and there were mysterious sounds coming from the basement. These little signs suggested something wasn't quite right. One day, Brett, one of the housemates, went down to the basement to reset a tripped breaker. What he found was unexpected: a man, who introduced himself as Jeremy. This stranger had been living in the basement, completely unnoticed. He refused to answer Brett's questions, leaving everyone in the house confused. The housemates decided to investigate further, but couldn't open the locked door to a part of the basement. Eventually, with the help of the landlord and police, they broke into the locked room. Inside, they found a fully furnished living space, complete with personal items like photos, clothes, and a TV. These belongings didn't belong to any of the residents. As it turned out, Jeremy had been secretly living there for months, slipping in and out using a side door that none of the tenants knew about. It remains unclear how long he stayed or why he chose this house, but the unsettling discovery left everyone shocked. Jeremy was evicted, and the locks were changed, but the memory of their secret housemate would be hard to forget. Number 13. Mummified infant remains and a Peter Pan obsession. In 2010, a woman in Los Angeles made a shocking discovery while cleaning out her apartment building's basement. Hidden inside a trunk, wrapped in newspapers from the 1930s, were 2 mummified infant remains. Along with the remains were Peter Pan-related items, including a copy of the book by J.M. Barrie and a membership card for the Peter Pan Woodland Club. The trunk belonged to Janet M. Barrie, whose name eerily matched the famous author of Peter Pan, though no familial link was found. DNA tests revealed that the infants were Janet's own children, leading to speculation that they may have been born out of wedlock. Given the time period, it's possible the infants died shortly after birth, but why she chose to hide their bodies remains an unsolved mystery. The combination of the mummified infants and the Peter Pan memorabilia has puzzled investigators and sparked countless theories. The tragic discovery left many unanswered questions, including Janet's connection to the Peter Pan theme and why she kept the bodies hidden for decades. Despite extensive investigation, no definitive conclusion has been reached, and the circumstances surrounding Janet's actions will likely remain a mystery forever. Number 12. 19th century well. A well in and of itself doesn't seem particularly frightening. It's out in the open, you can approach it with care, and you can see what's coming. But what if that well wasn't outside? What if it was right under your feet, hidden beneath your home, waiting for you to fall into its depths? Christopher Town, 67 years old, was helping a friend move furniture when the unthinkable happened. As he walked across the floor, he heard a sharp crack. Before he could react, the floorboards gave way beneath him, and Christopher plunged 20 feet into the cold, dark abyss of a 19th century well. This wasn't just any well, though. It had been capped off years ago, originally located outside the house, but when the home was expanded in the 1980s, the well was left uncovered, hidden only by wooden boards. When the floor gave way, Christopher fell into the well, clinging to the rough stone walls to keep from drowning. His feet never touched the bottom, and for several terrifying minutes, he fought to stay above the water. The situation could have been disastrous, but rescuers arrived in time to pull him to safety. Wells like these, often dug in the 19th century, were essential back in the day, serving as the main water source for many homes. But when they were forgotten or improperly sealed, they became hazards, just waiting for an unsuspecting victim to fall in. Number 11. Sharks. In July 2017, police in Georgia stopped Joshua Seguin from New York for driving without a license. During the routine search of his truck, officers found something unexpected: 5 small sharks in a large tank. Without the proper permit, owning or transporting these animals was illegal, and Joshua admitted he planned to sell them once he got to New York. This discovery led authorities to obtain a warrant to search Joshua's home. When they entered his basement, they were met with a shocking sight: a 15-foot above-ground pool filled with more sharks. There were 10 sharks in total, including 7 live sandbar sharks, 2 dead leopard sharks, and a dead hammerhead shark. Some of these sharks were endangered species. The live sharks were safely relocated to a nearby aquarium, and Joshua was charged with illegal possession of sharks and intent to sell them. Number 10. Migrants. In February of 2024, a routine inspection of a furniture store in New York took a surprising turn. The inspector found something no one expected: 74 migrant men from West Africa living in the basement. These individuals were seeking asylum in the United States, a process that has become increasingly difficult in recent times. What's important to note is that the store owner wasn't exploiting these men. Instead, they were trying to help. New York City's shelters were completely full, and if these men had gone there, they likely would have been turned away in a matter of weeks. To provide some relief, the store owner offered them a place to stay, hoping it would help them while they awaited more permanent solutions. The only reason the inspection even happened was due to complaints from the store's neighbors. They claimed there were constant disturbances, with people running in and out of the building late at night. Despite these complaints, the men were simply trying to survive and find a safe place to rest. When authorities found the migrants, they were relocated to a shelter, but many of them expressed a preference for staying at the store. This speaks volumes about the conditions they faced, both in shelters and while seeking asylum. Even the mayor of New York City acknowledged the issue, stating that something must be done to prevent makeshift housing like this from continuing to pop up. Number 9. A million pennies. While cleaning out a father-in-law's house, an unusual discovery was made in the basement. Bags and bags filled with pennies. After doing the math, the family realized there were 1 million pennies, which is $10,000 in coins. What made this even stranger was that the pennies were scattered throughout the house, even in crawl spaces, making it a tough job to collect them all. The house itself was a cluttered mess, filled with boxes and crates collected by the father-in-law and other relatives who had lived there. Sorting through the clutter to uncover 1 million pennies was not something anyone would have expected. The family considered cashing the pennies in, but they soon realized that using a coin machine would mean paying a fee, and transporting that many pennies to the bank would be a massive headache. They even called the bank directly, but the bank wasn't interested in accepting the coins. In the end, they decided to sell the collection online, hoping someone would buy the pennies in bulk. It's unclear if they found a buyer, but whoever gets them might be in for a surprise. There could be rare coins hidden among the lot, and if so, the buyer could score a great deal. As for the family, they were simply eager to get rid of the coins and the clutter. After dealing with such a massive find, it's easy to see why. Number 8. Nazi tank. In 2015, a quiet town in northern Germany was rocked by a discovery that sounded more like a war relic from a museum than something you'd expect to find in someone's home. An elderly man, later identified as Klaus-Dieter F., had a fully operational World War II-era Panther tank hidden in his basement in Heikendorf. The 84-year-old had collected and restored the 40-ton tank, along with an array of other war memorabilia, including an anti-aircraft gun, over 1,000 rounds of ammunition, and various Nazi artifacts. Authorities were tipped off when investigators searching for stolen Nazi art came across the stash. It took nearly 20 soldiers over 9 hours to extract the tank from the basement, a scene that left the entire town in disbelief. The man had reportedly even driven the tank around his neighborhood in the 1970s, once using it to clear snow during a particularly harsh winter. Despite the fascination surrounding this unusual collection, Klaus-Dieter F. was sentenced to a 14-month suspended prison sentence and fined approximately $300,000. The court also ruled that the tank and other weapons must be sold or donated to a museum, emphasizing that his collection violated Germany's strict War Weapons Control Act. Number 7. Secret Occupant. Velma Kellen, a 73-year-old retiree living in Yelm, Washington, began noticing that her house was unusually cold as the year 2012 came to an end. Despite setting her furnace to the maximum, the house remained chilly. Frustrated, she called a repairman to check the furnace in the basement. When the repairman arrived, he discovered that the furnace was working fine, but something strange had happened. The air duct had been torn in a way that redirected the heat to the basement instead of warming the upstairs. As he looked around, he noticed empty beer bottles and other trash scattered across the basement floor. Velma was shocked when she heard the news and started recalling other odd occurrences, like the smell of cigarettes in her home at random times, and her backyard gate being left open, even though she was sure she had closed it. Both she and the repairman quickly realized that someone had been secretly living in her basement. Velma contacted the police, and they investigated further. They believed the intruder had been accessing the basement through a crawl space, which was covered by a slab of stone. The air duct was repaired the next day, and while no arrests were made, the discovery left Velma shaken. To this day, it remains unclear how long the person had been living there, and there have been no further incidents. Number 6. Revolutionary War soldiers. When homeowners in Ridgefield, Connecticut began renovating their 18th century home, they likely expected to find outdated fixtures or old flooring. However, the discovery of 3 skeletons beneath the basement changed everything. The bones, uncovered in 2019, were later identified as being from men between the ages of 21 and 50. Archaeologists believe these remains are connected to the Revolutionary War, specifically the Battle of Ridgefield, fought in 1777. The skeletons were found buried only 4 feet below the surface in a hastily dug grave, which suggests these individuals may have died during the chaotic aftermath of the battle. Ridgefield was the site of one of Connecticut's most significant inland Revolutionary War skirmishes, where American militia led by Benedict Arnold clashed with British forces retreating from a raid in nearby Danbury. What made the discovery even more fascinating was the well-preserved state of the skeletons, allowing archaeologists to conduct thorough analyses. Early reports indicate that the men may have been militiamen, as evidenced by the size and structure of their bones. Buttons found near the remains are being examined, and researchers are using DNA and forensic studies to potentially uncover the identities of these men. Before we move on, here's today's subscriber's pick. Imagine living in your home for months without ever setting foot in the basement. For one couple in the Midwest, it was just a storage area, a place they barely thought about. But one day, they heard a strange noise coming from below. At first, they thought it was just mice. But curiosity got the best of them, and they decided to check it out. What they found left them absolutely stunned. A group of strangers, dressed in dark Gothic attire, had been sneaking into their basement. These intruders weren't just there for mischief. They were trying to contact the dead using a Ouija board. Apparently someone had died in the house decades ago, and this group believed they could reach that spirit. The couple was terrified and immediately called the authorities. The outcome? A restraining order was issued against the uninvited visitors, but the eerie experience stayed with the couple. It's one thing to hear bumps in the night, but discovering a cult in your own basement? That's enough to make anyone lose sleep. What would you do if you found something like this in your home? Let us know in the comments below. Number 5. Chapel. Most abandoned places carry a certain level of mystery, but when it's tied to a secret religious sect, the fear factor jumps up a notch. That's exactly what happened when Pat and Diane Farla decided to explore the hidden corners of their 170-year-old house. What they uncovered beneath a metal grid in their basement was far from ordinary. They found an abandoned chapel, seemingly untouched for decades. In the center of the chapel lay a cross, ominously placed on the floor. Hooks dangled from the ceiling, adding an eerie, unsettling atmosphere to the room. With each step deeper into the hidden space, the couple's curiosity grew. But what was this place? Why had it been hidden away for so long? Some clues suggested that the chapel may have been used by secret religious sects, groups that practiced their faith in secrecy due to persecution. Catholics or other nonconformists in centuries past may have used this concealed place for clandestine worship. An even more intriguing detail was uncovered: a set of stairs hidden behind a cupboard in the dining room, which could have served as a secret passage to this eerie chapel. Whether used for worship or refuge, the chapel spoke of a hidden history, a world of secrecy buried right beneath their feet. Number 4. Mysterious safe and weapons cache. In October of 2015, a series of photos were posted on a popular image-sharing website by a man named Jerry, who had recently moved into his own home. He had purchased the house just 2 weeks prior, and while it was very old, the low price made it a great deal for a first-time buyer. The previous owner had passed away, and the basement was packed with so much junk that Jerry could barely navigate it. As he began cleaning the cluttered basement, he noticed a piece of plywood that seemed oddly placed against the wall. It was pinned beneath the stairs, and something about it caught his attention. After some effort, Jerry managed to pry the plywood loose, revealing a hidden room behind it. Inside the room, he immediately spotted a locked safe, but that wasn't all. The small room contained multiple gun cases, stacked one on top of the other, along with crates of ammunition in various types and calibers. Among the most surprising discoveries was a hand grenade, although it was inactive and missing the safety pin. As for the locked safe, Jerry never shared an update on whether he managed to open it or not, leaving everyone wondering what might be inside. Number 3. Snake infestation. Royce Robbins and Shannon McFadden thought they had found their dream home in Elizabeth, Colorado. That is, until they started noticing a strange pattern. Garter snakes began appearing around their yard, and soon, these unwelcome visitors were spotted popping up through the wooden slats of their back deck. As spring gave way to warmer weather, the problem only got worse, with the snakes not only crawling around outside, but even sneaking into their home. The couple soon realized they were dealing with a massive infestation. Over 150 snakes had made a den beneath their house. The snakes, primarily garter snakes, are harmless to humans, but finding so many slithering creatures hiding under the deck turned their dream home into a nightmare. Their attempts to manage the situation on their own failed. and they eventually called in professional help. The exterminators worked to remove the reptiles, but the process wasn't cheap. The couple ended up spending over $8,000 to get rid of the snakes, replace the deck, and build a new shed. The infestation had been so extensive that snakes kept reappearing, and it seemed that the previous owners had conveniently forgotten to mention this in the house's sale. Number 2. Bear. Imagine hearing strange noises under your house, snoring sounds, rumblings, but dismissing them as a figment of your imagination. That's exactly what happened to a family in Lake Tahoe, California. Over the winter, they heard odd sounds but never suspected what was really beneath their home. A family of 5 bears, hibernating quietly in their crawl space. A mother bear had taken her 3 cubs, plus an orphaned cub she adopted, to shelter in the hidden space, making it their cozy winter den. For months, the bears slept undisturbed, unnoticed by the human occupants of the home. It wasn't until spring, when the bears started to stir, that the family realized something was living right under their feet. They quickly contacted the Bear League, a local volunteer group experienced in bear rescues. The Bear League responded immediately, safely guiding the bears out of the crawl space. Watching the bear family emerge, first the mother, then her cubs, was an unforgettable scene for the family and neighbors alike. This is not unusual in Lake Tahoe, where up to 150 bears annually seek shelter under homes during hibernation season. Number 1. Poop-covered man. One day, police received a frantic call from a concerned grandparent reporting that their grandson was in the basement, destroying property and acting erratically. The situation took an alarming turn when it was revealed that the young man had threatened to harm himself and might have been under the influence of drugs. When officers arrived on the scene, they found the 23-year-old man in a truly shocking state. He was naked, covered in fecal matter, and violently hitting his head against the low ceiling. The man was clearly in a state of crisis, jumping on furniture and injuring himself. Given his agitated and uncooperative behavior, the officers were left with no choice but to subdue him for his safety. A taser was deployed to prevent further self-harm, and the man was taken into custody. He was immediately transported for a mental health evaluation and, of course, cleaned up after the ordeal. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.